the same time, I'm happy to have helped over the last couple of months to be able to get this off the ground, and a technology-first approach from within the government now. It's not outside the government. It made all the sense in the world to make this the time that we went separate ways.
So it was true. There was an exclusive report in the Washington Post that said you were pushed out because your vision didn't align with either.
I would say that we arrived at it pretty mutually. I mean, I think when it came to Doge was in the government, so there's actually a law. It's called the Hatch Act.
Once again, no. He didn't break up with me. Like, we broke up with each other. Like, we had a neutral decision that we weren't like loving each other no more. Like, we were like growing separate ways. So like, I mean, it was no hard feelings. We just neutrally fell out of love, right? So yeah, I mean, you clicked on this video, so you already know Vivek himself is now a free man. You know what I'm saying? He doesn't have to like put on a show for the Republican Party, for Trump. He doesn't have to like put up this stance of like Trump is always right and everything that they're doing is 100% just perfect and beautiful. No, I am lying. Like, Vivek is still doing that. And I looked this up because I was like, this reminds me of something, right? And of course, I'm no therapist. I'm no doctor of any way, shape, or form. But I just see like some characteristics, okay, of Stockholm Syndrome. Now, hear me out. Once again, I'm no doctor, but I'm just observing from the outside looking in. Stockholm Syndrome. It occurs when hostages, kidnapping victims, or abuse survivors, which once again, if we need to look into it, maybe he's been abused by some Republicans, I don't know, develop positive feelings towards their captors or abusers, sometimes to the point of defending them. Now, once again, it's different from like, hey, I vote Democrat. I know this party is trash, but I'm holding out for some hope because of X, Y, Z reasons, whatever the case is. That's different. But the level of defending that Vivek is doing after we all seen with our own eyes, and I got 4 of them, so I really seen it in HD vision here, okay? We all seen what happened to him. He stepped out of pocket. He said some things about, the American voters, and they weren't riding with it. They didn't like it. So guess what? Boom, out the door he goes. I don't know what Vivek expected. This was from Steve Bannon, who's in the background, who's kind of like running some things, because he's like one of those white supremacists who would never get voted in because he's a white supremacist. Like, of course. But he's one of Trump's main guys. He takes information from, he said, we love converts, Bannon noted, but the converts sit in the back and study for years and years and years to make sure you understand the faith and you understand the nuance of the faith. I don't know what this faith is, and understand how you can internalize the faith. Once again, what is this faith? Don't come up and go to the pulpit in your first week here and start lecturing people about the way things are going to be, Bannon at it. If you're going to do that, we're going to rip your face off. Hey, Vivek, do you not understand? I never thought the lepers would eat my face. Hey, I'm just saying, once again, I'm just on the outside looking in, but it kind of just seems like Vivek can't get a signal. He doesn't understand when people do not want you around. Maybe that's why he's so successful. I don't know. But let's go ahead, go to this interview, and just listen. Just listen to what he's saying. And once again, I need this for copyright purposes, But listen to the words that he is saying, and you be the judge and say, does he have this Stockholm Syndrome? Because I honestly believe so.
Starting now, why not? You called me over the weekend. I told you I happened to be in the city, so this worked out well.
Well, tell us, Vivek, what happened with Doge?
Yeah.
Like,
So,
Well, congratulations on the job.
thank you, man.
Well,
I
you don't have
appreciate
it anymore.
Yeah, it's not my job right now.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Well,
running
sorry.
for.
I take that back then.
I'm
So
moving
what
on to my
happened?
next
Did you get pushed
next
out?
frontier.
Did you get fired? Like, what?
No,
did you leave?
it was a slightly different vision from where we started to where we landed. And it's not that it's one's right or wrong, but if you take a look at where we began, right, DOJ is going to be an outside body to the government. One of my core areas of focus throughout has been the constitutional and legal basis for shutting down the bureaucracy in the federal government and downsizing it. That's what I focused, written my books on, et cetera. It evolved in more of a direction of a technology project, using a technology-first approach. And so Elon and I were on good terms. We have good personal relationship, slightly different approaches to the project. And what he and I both concluded, and I think this is right, is given my focus on law, on legislation, the right way to realize my vision is through elected office. And so that's what I'm going to be pursuing. We have an announcement probably coming up in the next month, but that.
Okay, so it was slightly different perspectives and like where this Dodge thing, whatever, is supposed to go, and you're just now figuring that out. I mean, this was announced even before the election, and now you guys are just now figuring that out. You guys didn't like talk on the phone. I'm pretty sure you both got private jets, like fly, talk to each other and say, hey, this is my idea. Hey, this is my idea. Oh, we got two different perspectives and where we want this to go. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this together. So you're telling me it was just a slight difference in understanding of where this Dodge thing is supposed to go? Once again, it just sounds like a bunch of excuses to me.
That's my next path.
The governor of Ohio, we heard about that.
That's
we heard about
that's coming up soon. But that was where we all landed. Was the right way to do this for me was if I'm focused on constitutional law, deregulation, legislation to downsize government. That's been my vision for a long time. Let me realize it on my own 2 feet through elected office. At the same time, I'm happy to have helped over the last couple of months to be able to get this off the ground, and a technology-first approach from within the government now. It's not outside the government. It made all the sense in the world to make this the time that we went separate ways.
So it was true. There was an exclusive report in the Washington Post that said you were pushed out because your vision didn't align with Elon. So
I would say that we arrived at it pretty mutually. I mean, I think when it came to Doge was in the government, so there's actually a law. It's called the Hatch Act.
Once again, no. He didn't break up with me. Like, we broke up with each other. Like, we had a neutral decision that we weren't like loving each other no more. Like, we were like growing separate ways. So like, I mean, it was no hard feelings. We just neutrally fell out of love, right? I can tell just the way that he just rolled that off the tongue, like he actually believed it. I'm pretty sure he's used that phrase 4 or 5 times throughout plenty of relationships. Like, nah, man, like, she didn't break up with me. We just kind of agreed that we didn't want to be with each other. But let's go to 1820. This is where it's just, I don't know. I don't want to say I feel bad, but like, come on.
I think people just get nervous when there's no systems in place, like what DEI should have been if it was done the right way, because then
Hold on, let's see.
That actually fosters resentment. And the weirdest thing I think has happened in the last few years, and I do actually blame a lot of the DEI and related policies for this, is that we have seen a reactionary wave of racism in the country, anti-minority racism, that would not have existed but for that DEI culture of not only taking something away from somebody based on their skin color, but even worse, in the name of inclusion, saying that you can't express your view. And then there's an ugly side that comes up in response. So I don't want this game of tug and war where the war continues. Just everybody lay down arms. Are we perfect? No, we're not. But
So now he's talking about DEI, and if I heard him correctly, this is my 3rd time listening, he's blaming DEI for the racist reactions, but don't understand the origins of people who originally were discriminated against. Once again, I have no problem if you don't like DEI for whatever reason, but what is your replacement of it? What is your answer to the original discrimination against a group of people? You can't just say, "Oh, no more DEI," and think that things are just going to naturally get better, which he's going to admit it's not. But once again, I wish people were there who can have a conversation and say, "Hey, what do you replace it with?" Let's take a listen.
But whatever residual racism or prejudice might exist, let it slowly melt away as we've been on the course for the last 60 years of heading in the right direction. And then let's have a substantive. I think we've been in the right direction, obviously. Compared to 1960, I don't think that's really debatable.
I think we were.
So now we're having a healthy discussion where I think, I think that the rise of even well-intentioned DEI programs, even from those who had the best of intentions, I think did, in retrospect, I think we can say, set us back.
Not the rise of MAGA and Trump's executive orders from last week.
I think Trump's executive orders from last week were about, this is what we're talking about, so it's the circle here, which is, does ending the DEI programs, do we think that's a step forward for the country or not? I think it's a step forward for the country. Is that the destination? No, it's just the beginning of a real discussion about equal opportunity that lifts all Americans up.
And why would you have a conversation about equal opportunity if they don't even want to have a conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I understand where you're trying to go with it, but you can't have one without the other, I think is the point. And how do you do that? It seems like that's your disconnect even with Doge, right?
No, I think a couple different topics there. Look, are we a country where we want equal opportunity for every person to achieve the maximum of their God-given potential? Yes, we do. Are we perfect in realizing that? No, we're not. Do we think that group quota systems are the right way to achieve that? I'm of the view the answer is no. And I think the last few years show us that it hasn't even been effective in actually empowering the people it was supposed to empower, while it's created resentment of a lot of the people who felt deprived. So I think we just got to.
I don't disagree with that last
We just got to go to post. We got to go to post DI world. That ship, in my opinion, for the better, maybe in other people's opinion for the worse, that ship has sailed.
Okay. Once again, however you feel about Charlemagne, I'm starting to kind of have my own kind of feelings about him. Hey, Charlemagne, you need to educate yourself of what DEI actually is and how that, when it's in place properly, what the results are supposed to look like. Because you agreeing to his false definition of what DEI is, hey, got your nose wide open. Hey, okay, check this out. This is a clip from me having a conversation with Dr. Dabinga, who is a DEI expert who knows some things, and listen to his definition of what DEI and compare it to what Vivek just gave us.
So I have 3 kids. When my son was, let's say,
the conversation of it wrong.
That's right.
And that's why we have people talking about DEI and they have no idea what they're talking about. So can you please, explain it to me once again, my audience, so if there's ever any questions, they can reference a video like this and say, this is what DEI is supposed to do, this is what it means, and this is why people have it wrong.
Well, DEI has taken different names over the years, kind of like people have added to it. So, people talk about diversity, then people talk about diversity and inclusion, and then people talk about diversity and equity. And so over the years, it's become diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, also people have added other letters to it, like DEBA, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and access. Some people have added a J on the end for justice as well, but that's the idea. So when we talk about diversity, right? Diversity is a state of difference and understanding difference. Equity is not the same as equality, right? So I have 3 kids. When my son was, let's say, 9 months old and my daughter was 4 years old, they both have bedrooms upstairs in my house. That's equality. But when it's time to go up the stairs to go to bed, one needs more help to get up those stairs. That's equity. Providing resources to those in need so they can get to equal footing with everybody else. That's what equity is about. And then inclusion is about making sure that people are part of the conversation, are part of the decision making. I spoke at a company once, and there was a Native American sister who was talking about how in their conversations about the indigenous community, their motto is no talk about us without us, right? So this idea of inclusion is not just the look in terms of, yeah, we hired some Black people, we hired some Latinos. It's inclusion. You know, Dr. King said the real integration is not just being able to live next door. It's about the inclusion, the sharing of power, resources, and responsibilities. Right? So who's the CEO? What does your CEO look like? Who's the principal of the school? Who's the sheriff? That's what inclusion is talking about. And so when we're looking at DEI programs, people have talked about affirmative action as a DEI program. And yes, it was a program for diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's important to know, as I talk about in my book, the primary beneficiaries of affirmative action were white women, actually, in many different ways. And they still are in many ways, but people don't want to look at it. So when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the last thing I'll say is that it's not about hiring unqualified workers or admitting unqualified students. In no way, shape, or form. It's about giving access to people who historically didn't have an opportunity to even have their applications looked at because they were the wrong color, or they were the wrong gender, or they grew up in the wrong part of town. Yeah. That's what it's talking about. Nobody's talking about like Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense nomination, and him being what we would call a DEI hire because he's actually not qualified. But this country has always had affirmative action for white men. That's what slavery was rooted in. That's what the Homestead Act was rooted in. That's what the indentured servant system was rooted in. So I hope that gives people some clarity when people are talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
So once again, why are we not being honest with the conversation and understanding what DEI actually means and what that actually does? I don't know. And once again, like if you lack the information or the tools to handle that conversation, you're going to, every word that you say in that conversation is off of false information, and you don't know what you're talking about, and then people are going to listen to you, take that as truth, and now you're passing that misinformation along. So it is very important people understand what they're talking about. Things actually matter in conversations as important as this. Let's continue.
No trickle down, because what you're talking about, to affect people before they get to 8th grade, you have to have people that were able to go to these schools, were able to have these certain experiences, come back to the communities, teach, build different administrators. Like there's a whole like system that people think won't fall back down.
You can't trust white supremacy.
Yeah, so it's like even with you like with the Doge thing, right? And you backing away. Now me listening to you, I'm like, oh, it sounds like y'all didn't agree because morally you want to do right. I don't know if I believe that Elon Musk and a Trump cabinet wants to do that.
Well, on that front, let me just say, I think we all share an opposition to bureaucracy. And by the way, you think about how bureaucracy hurts even the least well-off among us. It actually hurts the least well-off among us the most. I don't want to get too much in details unless you're interested in this, but take housing costs in the country, right? Why are housing costs spiking? It's because of bureaucracy and red tape that's stopping new housing construction. There's all these zoning limitations. There's all kinds of limitations for single-family homes, for smaller homes. It's really hard to build one. And a lot of that comes from regulatory red tape. So on the stuff relating to cutting back red tape and bureaucracy and regulations, I don't view that as a left versus right issue. In fact, one of the things I loved in the time period that I was helpful involving setting up Doge was how many Democrats also said, hey, you know what? There's actually a lot of issues that we care about where bureaucracy is getting in the way as well that raised their hand. So that, I think, is just a strictly good efficiency, and elimination of bureaucracy, I think, is good across the board. As it relates to getting serious, though, about addressing root inequality causes in the United States, I think a lot of people enjoy being on one political side or the other without actually rolling up their sleeves and doing the hard work of getting to the root cause. I think the root cause starts with education at a really young age and a stable family foundation from which those kids are able to grow up and have access to the same opportunities as anybody else.
So it's just really interesting. And once again, if you guys want to watch the full episode, this is an hour, 8 minutes. I'm not going to cover the entire thing here. But once again, he kind of dodged the question in regards of when it comes to trusting people's intuition or trusting that people are going to be naturally good people. We just need history to understand That's not going to happen. And I don't care how you try to sugarcoat it, how you try to say what we need to do in the future and this and this and this, unless you can control millions of people through your mind. I don't trust that. That's why we have laws saying like you can't kill people. You can't drive your vehicles on the sidewalks. Like we have rules and laws for a reason. There's no way to sugarcoat that. So once again, if you have an issue with DEI, I need to hear how you're going to systematically force people not to be racist and discriminate based off race, gender, or sexual orientation, because there is a history, a long history that affects people for generations that we can look to and say, yeah, I kind of just don't trust people just to be people. And then going back to, this whole firing thing, like he never gave an answer. All he did was beat around the bush and just say like, we had little differences of X, Y, and Z. So, and I kind of want to be governor and do this whole, no. Hey, Vivek, it's not working over here. Once again, this is a con. That's simple. And Vivek cannot spin or speak out against Trump, because if he does, that is going to hurt his political career, because he built his career on MAGA, on Republican MAGA voters. And if you speak out against Trump, you're not going to have a career. So that's why he's doing this little two-step dance. Don't want to tell the truth and just be like, we just had a differences in opinions and I just wanted to do this anyway. So we kind of just agreed to go our separate ways. Like, come on, Vivek, it doesn't work like that. But once again, guys, if you agree or disagree with anything I said in this video, let me know in the comments down below, or hit that Discord button so me and you can have that one-on-one talk. And like always, let's have that conversation.